Hello everyone. So today we'll see static variables. What are static variables? By definition, static variables they are declared using the keyword called static. Okay, and they belong to the class and not object. Unlike your instance variables, which belong to your objects, which are tightly coupled to your objects, these static variables don't belong to any object and they only belong to the class. And only one copy per class will exist. See, in instance variables, number of objects when you create for a same class, each of the object would have the same instance variable, right? Each copy of the instance variable is there with each of the object that is created. But now here it is not the same case. It is different. It is only per class. If you have declared one static variable inside your class, no matter how many objects you create, this particular static variable will not be part of your objects. It will be part of your class and it will only be one copy per class. I hope you understood. And when is it created? It is created when the class is loaded. If you see in the past tutorial, in the JVM architecture, we have seen the class loader part, right? Whenever the class is loaded, that is when this static variables are created. And when are they destroyed? It is destroyed when the program ends. Okay, that is the scope. And these are shared across all the objects. The objects won't have these variables inside them because they are not having this copy. This is with the class, right? They don't belong to object. That's why objects will not have it, but objects can access this. All different objects can access the same single static variable which is part of a single class. I hope you understood. And now we will see the example. It will be more clear. And here we are using, how do you access this variable? So we use the class name and then access the variable. That's how we generally use the static variables. That's how we access them. If you're trying to access the static variable within the same class where it is declared, then it is fine even if you don't use the class name in order to access the variable name. And where is it stored? It is stored in the method area or class area. In the JVM architecture, if you've seen, there is something called as a method area or class area. So all your static variables that are created, they are stored in that particular method area or class area because this belongs to the class, right, and not the object. Got it? Now let's deep dive into the okay. So there is this code here. So static variable demo, this is your code. So I've declared two static variables. Okay. Static variables, generally we use static variables to create constants. That's what we use static variables generally for, but its use case is not only limited to declaring constants, but it can be reused at multiple other places. For example, here there is a variable called company, which is of string type, and I've given Google as the company name, and the count here is currently 0. So these two variables are static variables because they have the word keyword static with them. And now integer employee ID. So this is not a static variable because it is not having any static keyword. And what kind of variable is it, if you can think about it? Yes. So this is an instance variable. The reason why it's called as an instance variable because it's outside the method and inside the class. So this is your um, instance variable. Now you have the main method and you're trying to create the object. Okay, you have created the object of this particular class and you're trying to set some employee ID. Okay, for employee 1, let's give this employee ID as 101 and increase the counter. We are not using the object to increase the counter because this particular count is a static um, variable. So this is a static variable, so it is not uh, associated with the object. Okay, all objects can access it if you want to, but generally it's like it's a shared memory resource. So this particular count is shared memory resource, so you can simply increase the count without explicitly involving the object. So here you have done the count plus plus, and you created another object here. Okay, emp2. Now in this another object, you are setting the employee ID as 102, and then increment the counter because it is not associated with the object. See, this count is not inside the object, right? If it was inside this particular object, then you would do emp2 dot count plus plus, but it is not part of the object itself. That's why you should not use this as a prefix, or you cannot use this object directly. I am just accessing this count since it is a static variable, and because it is in the same class where I have declared it, and I am using it in some method which is also part of the same class. That's why I don't need to write the class name explicitly in front of this. I don't have, what I mean to say is, I don't have to do this. Okay, so this is not needed. Okay, see, this is not needed. Even if you do, it's fine, but this is not needed because you're trying to do it in the same class where you're trying to access this particular static variable. And now now you're trying to create another object, okay, another roll number, and you have given the count. Okay, now let's see. uh, we are just printing the total objects count and the employee IDs here and the company name. So let me just run this code. Take a pause and try to guess what would be the output. And here's the output. So the total objects are 3 because you've incremented the count here. It's not like employee 1 only has count 1, employee 2 has count 1. It's not like that. These This is a shared memory. So that's why the count is 3 here, and employee IDs you could see, and the company output is Google here. Let's take one more example. Okay, so things would be more clear. Okay, so this is another class, static variable demo test. Here also I've defined the two variables. One is your company name Google, static variable, and employee count. This time I'm using something called as an employee count, and this is also a static variable. Why the employee count is static is because employee count is generic, right? It is not tightly coupled to a specific employee object, right? It is generic. So whatever is a shared resource or generic thing, I can make it as static. Okay, now here this is the instance variable. Employee name is the instance variable. Okay, okay, employee is an instance variable because this is declared outside your method and inside your class. And now what is this? This is important. What is this? So this is called a constructor. So a constructor is nothing but, we will discuss in depth in other tutorials, but for now a constructor is like a method, but it is not a method because it does not have any return type, and it is having the same name as the class name. So hence this is a constructor. And since we are having some parameters here, okay, it is called as parameterized constructor because it can accept anything here in the parameters, and then it can do anything inside this. And when is a constructor called? A constructor is called whenever you try to create an object. When do you create an object? When you use the new keyword, then you create an object. That's how this constructor would be invoked. And what is the purpose of a constructor? It is used to initialize your variables. Simple. So here we are just taking an employee name here, and I'm trying to set this employee name using the keyword this. Okay, we are trying to initialize this instance variable called employee name using the parameterized constructor. And what does this keyword refer to? This keyword refers to the current calling object reference. What does it mean? Current calling object, who is calling? Whoever is calling this constructor. Let's say if you see this particular line, you're using a keyword called new here, right? There is a new object that is getting created with this particular employee name called Sam. Whatever this new object that is being created, let's say if the reference of that object is 123, 0x123, that reference would be pointed to this. This keyword will hold the reference of this particular object that is currently created. That's why I use the sentence, or I use the word this always refers to current calling object. When you create this emp1 using this new keyword, this will point to emp1. Here in this line, this keyword will point to the employee to object reference. Okay, I hope it is clear. And we are just doing employee count plus plus here. And in the display method, we are simply trying to display the employee name and the company. Simple. And now let's go to the main method. What is it? So here in this line, we are trying to create the object since it is a parameterized constructor, right? Since it's a parameterized constructor, when you create this constructor, the class name and the constructor name is same, right? So it will go to this, the control will go to this, and whatever you are passing here, it will go here, and it will take, you will take it here, and you will try to set it inside this variable. See, this is an instance variable, right? Every instance variable is tightly coupled, or it is part of your object, right? So this instance variable is part of my employee one object, right? It will be inside my employee one object, right? So this, using this keyword, we are saying that you, whatever the name that is being passed here in the parameters, you take that and assign it to the object. So this keyword, again I'm just repeating, it refers to the current calling object. So using this line, you have set Sam as the employee name in the emp1 object, and you try to increment the employee count. This is very important. You try to increase the employee count, but nowhere you have used this keyword, right? Nowhere you have used emp1 or this keyword anywhere, any object reference. The reason why is this is a static variable. So for static variables, you don't use any object association, or you don't try to use any object, right? It is a shared memory resource. Similarly, employee 2, I have given some name, employee 3, I have given some name, and then if you go down, I'm just calling my display method, emp1 dot display, emp2 dot display. Similarly, after that, I'm just trying to print what is the employee count that is there. And after that, I'll just try to change the company name to Microsoft, and again I'll print this. And I'm just trying to access the company using the class name. This is also fine, right? Because this is a static variable. Even if you don't use the class name, it is fine, because this particular main method belongs to the same class where the static variable is declared that you are trying to access. Simple. Now let's run the code and see what's the output. Okay, so now I've got the output. So you could take a pause and try to relate this code and this particular output. Okay, so if you see, we are trying to display initially employee 1, 2, 3. So employee 1 is like Sam works at Google, John works at Google, and David works at Google. Why? Because in the display print method, you are printing it in that way. Okay, and after that, the employee count. So there are three. em- uh, so there are three employees, right? Employee count is three. It's a shared resource. You just did employee plus plus, right? You did employee count plus plus every time you created an object. That's why you got three as the count here. And after this, you, you will see that. Let me expand this. You'll see that Sam works at Microsoft, John works at Microsoft, David works at Microsoft, right? Because we have changed the company name here. So the company name, right? So directly, it means that we have changed this variable directly, because it's a shared memory, right? It's a static variable. So I don't have to use any object or anything. I've tried to directly update this from Google to Microsoft, and all the objects that we're trying to refer to this company, right? emp1 dot display, emp2 dot display. So employee 1 dot display, employee 2 dot display. For all these people, the company got changed. You you did not have to do anything like emp1 dot company. You don't have to do, because it's a static variable, right? I hope you understood. And here we are trying to print it using the class name, right? The company is now Microsoft, from Microsoft to Google, right? Okay. So the point here is emp1 dot display, emp2 dot display. So this is what we are doing, and we are printing it. Okay, so there was a small change that I did. Actually, the name of the class was incorrect. It was referring to the previous example code, and it was accessing this company. Okay, we were trying to use this, so it was trying to print the company name as Google, but I have changed the class name to the current class name. Okay, Now when I print it, the company name you are getting in the console output as you are trying to get it as Microsoft, because you have updated it here, right? So see, at line number 32 you have updated it, right? Once you have updated this, right, no matter what object will access it, right? So since you um, access it with your class name, that's why you get Microsoft at the end in the output. If I remove and update it with a different class name, okay, where this company static variable is declared, it is also declared here, right? So it was trying to access it from there. If I run this, it will show that company name as Google, because it is referring to the other it was referring to the other static variable. Okay, so ideally this should have been test here. Okay, and let me run now, it will work perfectly fine. Yeah, so that's it for this video. Try to write some code and practice it, and things will be more clear. Yeah, thank you.